You open your eyes. The ground beneath you is still cold, but the morning sun is rising rapidly. You look around and realize the landscape is entirely unfamiliar. Tall grass sways between scattered trees. There is a lake shimmering in the distance. The animals moving near the water look like something out of a textbook, larger and stranger than anything you've ever seen in a modern zoo. The air is filled with the calls of exotic birds, the low rumble of grazing herds, and unfamiliar guttural howls echoing from the shadows. You pull your phone out of your pocket. No signal. There are no roads. There are no power lines. There is no city on the horizon. And then a far more terrifying realization hits you. The very concept of a city will not exist for more than 1,000,000 years. You don't have a knife, a lighter, a water filter, or spare glasses. You have only the clothes on your back and the knowledge inside your head. A timer starts ticking in your mind. You don't need to survive forever. First, you just need to survive until sunset. How long would a modern human actually last in East Africa 1.8 million years ago? We love to imagine that if we were thrown back into the deep past, our modern brains would allow us to dominate. We understand that the Earth revolves around the sun. We know that invisible microorganisms cause disease. We understand the laws of physics, chemistry, and nutrition. We know why the world works. But there is a brutal, unforgiving difference between knowing why the world works and knowing how to survive inside it. Your brain is entirely modern. But in this world, your modern knowledge is almost completely useless. The prehistoric landscape spreading out before you looks like a paradise of abundance. There are animals everywhere. Water is nearby. Trees are heavy with leaves and unknown fruits. There is no industrial pollution, no smog, no concrete. But abundance does not mean easy. In the wild, nature is not an open supermarket where you can simply pick what you need. Every single resource belongs to something else, and that something is usually prepared to kill to defend it. Water attracts apex predators. A dead carcass draws in massive hyenas and saber-toothed cats. A sweet-looking berry might be violently toxic. A cool, inviting patch of shade might already be occupied by a venomous snake. An empty cave might be the den of a leopard. You are standing in a world where you do not know the rules, but everything else does. And you are not the only type of human walking this earth. Around 1.8 million years ago, the human family tree was not a single straight line. You have not traveled back to the age of a generic caveman. You have landed in an era where multiple distinct forms of early humanity coexist in the same East African landscape. Homo erectus is striding across the plains with a body built for long-distance walking. Homo habilis is still present, carrying older, more primitive traits. And then there are species like Paranthropus boisei, massive-jawed hominins adapted to chewing tough, fibrous plants. They don't necessarily view each other as one big human family. They might share the same lake shores, avoid one another, or compete fiercely for resources. The temperature is rising. Your throat is parched. Your modern instinct screams at you to walk straight toward that shimmering lake in the distance. But water is the very first lethal trap of the prehistoric world. Water is the epicenter of the entire ecosystem. Herbivores gather to drink. Predators lie in wait in the tall grass. Massive crocodiles rest silently right at the water's edge. The muddy banks are a chaotic mess of overlapping footprints, and the approach is completely exposed. A 1.8 million-year-old foot bone belonging to Homo habilis, discovered at Olduvai Gorge, bears bite marks matching those of a modern crocodile. It is a chilling reminder that the water's edge was a terrifying, high-stakes gamble for our ancestors. Your modern brain knows that water contains deadly bacteria. You know you desperately need to boil it. But knowing about bacteria doesn't magically produce a heat-resistant clay pot, or does it guarantee you can spark a fire to boil the water. You know the water might kill you slowly with disease. But avoiding the water will kill you quickly with dehydration. And the punishing heat doesn't even need to hunt you. You have no idea where the next water source is or how many miles away it might be. You don't know how brutal this season will get, or if those clouds on the horizon will actually bring rain. The ancient hominins living here don't need satellite maps. They possess generations of hyper-local knowledge. They remember the seasonal flow of rivers. They know which trees indicate underground moisture, and they can read the flight patterns of birds to find hidden springs. To you, the landscape is empty and confusing. To them, every tree, every footprint, and every cloud is a billboard of vital information. As dehydration sets in, your cognitive functions begin to degrade. You start making rushed, panicked decisions. You walk directly under the midday sun. You rush toward the water without scanning the reeds. Before starvation even becomes a factor, heat and thirst are already destroying your ability to think. But let's assume you managed to find safe water. Now you look around for food. You recognize that there are roots, seeds, fruits, and meat out there. But recognizing that food exists is very different from knowing which food is safe. Which colorful berry will nourish you and which one will paralyze your nervous system? Which root needs to be pounded and soaked in water to remove toxins before eating? Is that scavenged meat fresh enough to consume, or is it already swarming with lethal parasites? The landscape is overflowing with food. You simply don't know which part of it is food. You are standing inside a massive life-saving library, but you cannot read a single word of the language. Your stomach begins to ache. Your modern instinct tells you to go find something to eat immediately. But your body needs you to completely ignore that urge. You can survive for weeks without a proper meal. But long before starvation kills you, you will face dehydration, heat stroke, panic, a freezing night, lack of sleep, or a predator's ambush. In those critical first few hours, wandering aimlessly to find a meal might be the fastest way to get yourself killed. You know, ancient humans used stone tools. So you pick up 2 rocks and smash them together, expecting a sharp blade to magically appear. But the rock shatters into useless dust. A sharp fragment flies into your eye. You slice your palm open on a jagged edge. You don't know which type of stone fractures cleanly. You don't know the precise angle or the exact amount of kinetic force required to strike the core. The first human technology didn't begin the day someone picked up a rock. It began the day someone learned to predict exactly how that rock would break. A sharp stone flake was the ultimate multi-tool. It allowed early humans to slice thick animal hides, butcher meat rapidly, before scavengers arrived, and carve wooden digging sticks. Without that simple sharp edge, you are practically defenseless. And you are definitely not the apex predator here. The East African landscape is crawling with formidable rivals. Massive saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, ancient wild dogs, and aggressive mega-herbivores. Early humans were both hunters and hunted, navigating a terrifying middle ground in the food chain. You see a large cat resting under a tree in the distance. Your modern mind thinks, it isn't attacking, so I am safe. But you don't realize the predator is simply waiting for you to bend down or waiting for the sun to set. In this world, just because you aren't currently being attacked doesn't mean you aren't actively being hunted. Then you spot a freshly killed animal carcass. It looks like a stroke of luck, free meat, rich fat, and warm fur without the danger of the hunt. But a carcass is a massive pulsing beacon across the savannah. It attracts hyenas returning big cats, vultures, and rival hominin groups. Approaching a kill site means you must instantly calculate how long the animal has been dead. Scan the perimeter for the predator that killed it. Slice off the most calorie-dense meat with a sharp stone and run before the real owners return. The meat wasn't just sitting there waiting for you. It was the center of a violent, high-stakes turf war that began long before you arrived. As the sun begins to dip low, a harsh reality sets in. You know the theory behind making fire. You know it requires friction, oxygen, and fuel. But knowing the physics of fire does not equal the ability to create it with your bare hands. You don't have a steel knife to carve a proper bow drill. You don't know which local wood creates the best ember. You don't have perfectly dry tinder. In fact, evidence suggests that habitual controlled use of fire by hominins 1.8 million years ago is still highly debated by scientists. You might create a tiny wisp of smoke. You might blister your hands rubbing sticks together. But before you can conjure a flame, the sun disappears. When night falls, the rules of the world change completely. Visibility drops to zero. The temperature plummets. Every snapping twig sounds like an approaching predator. You cannot sleep because your modern brain is flooding your system with adrenaline. Where do you go? If you sleep on the ground, you are completely exposed. If you climb a tree, you risk falling, freezing, or discovering that leopards climb trees better than you do. If you seek out a cave, you might stumble into a sleeping predator's den. During the day, you searched for resources. At night, you must find a place where no other animal has already decided to sleep. And then out of the terrifying darkness, you hear a rhythmic, deliberate sound. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of stone striking stone. You are not alone. As the morning light breaks, you see them. A small band of early humans. They have stone tools, gathered food, and a deep, multi-generational understanding of this exact landscape. But they don't know who you are. You are taller, dressed in bizarre fabrics, and speak a language of incomprehensible sounds. You don't know their social cues, their acceptable physical distance, or how to show submission without appearing weak. Your ultimate survival test isn't fighting off a lion. It is convincing this group of ancient humans that you are worth keeping alive. You don't need to prove you are smarter than them. You need to prove you are not a threat, that you can cooperate, share, learn quickly, and follow the rhythm of the group. Because the basic unit of human survival has never been the isolated individual. It has always been the group. One person might know where to find water. Another knows how to shape the best stone flakes. Another recognizes the warning call of a specific bird. Knowledge is decentralized and shared. Joining a group means gaining access to dozens of watchful eyes' shared meals. Protection for the vulnerable and the luxury of sleeping while someone else stands guard. Your modern intelligence might actually make you a danger to yourself. You know you are Homo sapiens, standing among older hominins. You might feel a misplaced sense of superiority. You might think you can lead them, invent new technologies overnight, or outsmart nature. That arrogance will get you killed. You might wander off to test an unknown plant, ignore their subtle warnings, or waste precious energy trying to build a complex trap that fails. Your brain is more modern. But in their world, modern intelligence without local practical knowledge just looks like fatal stupidity. You don't need a lion attack to end your journey. All it takes is a twisted ankle, a cut from a jagged rock, or a blister on your heel. A minor injury slows you down, forces you to burn more energy, and makes you a burden to the group. In the ancient world, the most dangerous injury wasn't always the one that killed you outright. It was the one that forced your group to make a devastating choice between waiting for you and continuing without you. Could you survive the first 24 hours? Perhaps if you were exceptionally cautious, stayed perfectly still in the shade, and avoided panicking. But what about day 3 when the blisters burst? Day 5 when sleep deprivation shatters your reaction time? Day and when you eat the wrong tuber and violently empty your stomach? Prehistory didn't need to kill you in one spectacular cinematic disaster. It could simply slowly strip away every single option, keeping you alive one by one. Today you survive because you are supported by a massive invisible web. You drink clean water because engineers built treatment plants. You eat because farmers, truck drivers, and safety inspectors did their jobs. You survive illnesses because generations of scientists documented medicine. When you turn on a faucet, you are utilizing the labor of millions. When you buy groceries, you are leaning on the collective knowledge of thousands of people you will never meet. Modern humans are not physically weak or unadaptable. We just adapted in a completely different way. We outsourced our survival from our individual bodies. and placed it into the structure of society. You don't survive today because you know how to do everything. You survive because you live inside a group so massive and complex that you can barely even perceive it. So who is actually smarter? You know the age of the Earth, how DNA works, and where the continents are located. The early human knows which tracks lead to water, which rocks hold a sharp edge, and what the silence of the birds actually means. You possess more knowledge about the universe, but they possess more knowledge about the next hour. And only one of those types of knowledge will keep a human breathing through the night. Perhaps the real question isn't whether you could survive among the first humans. Perhaps the question is, how long would it take you to realize that you need them far more than they could ever need you? Cave Curious is a YouTube channel dedicated to exploring the fascinating science, evolutionary biology, and strange, humbling mysteries hidden within human prehistoric history. If you love stepping out of the modern world to uncover the ancient roots of who we are, hit that subscribe button and join the Cave Curious community. Sometimes looking into the deep past doesn't just show us where we came from. It reveals everything we still desperately rely on today.